Hey everybody, welcome to this recap of Hyrox Chicago from this past weekend. Out of the gate, the men don't seem to be flying. You can see Venic here thinks about it, looks around and sees that no one else is really going for it, and so holds himself back a little. Most of the males came into the ski around the same kind of time and were pushing the pace. Kent out first, you got Sandbach second, Ronkovic third and Venic fourth. To be honest, the first quarter of the race really was dominated by Kent and Sandbach just pushing each other. You see them go back and forth a number of times. The two of them come into the sled push with a bit of a lead, and it's pretty impressive actually that they pushed the first 2 or 2.5 lengths unbroken. Michael Sandbach looked a little more comfortable than Ryan Kent. Ryan Kent looked like he was trying to match Sandbach, but by the end it was still pretty tight. You do have to wonder if Kent potentially overreached a little trying to match Sandbach on these sled pushes. Coming into the sled pull, we're in almost the same position, so Sandbach just very, very slightly ahead of Kent, Kent chasing Sandbach. It's at this point of the race though that things start to really change. Up until now, Dylan Scott and David Megida had been around 5th to 10th place. What you see here is David Megida takes off, just out of camera frame, so you may have missed it, and Dylan Scott too. The two of them must have had pretty impressive sled times, and that will only add to the sort of American versus European sled argument. And here you see Sandbach looks like he's doing the burpees on his own, but just behind him there you've got Dylan and David, and they're catching up. So Dylan and David are both very, very good at the back end of a race. So with Kent falling back, it looked like the race now came down to could Michael Sandbach hold off Dylan Scott and David Megida. As you can see here, he makes it to the row first, Megida and Scott coming onto the rower second and third. And Kent got to the rower shortly after, but as you can see, Venic and Ronkovic are catching up. It was at the Farmers Carry that David Megida took first place for the first time in the race. I did wonder if perhaps Dylan Scott was struggling a bit here. You can see his shoulders start to round a great deal, but he actually ended up coming second, overtaking Michael Sandbach as well. Megida put enough distance between him and his opponents that he was able to grab a drink of water going into the sandbag lunges. Coming out of the rock zone though, it was clear that Michael Sandbach and Dylan weren't prepared to just let him go. Dylan especially at this point looked like he was up for challenging Megida. As you can see, he's stepping straight through those lunges. Coming into this race though, we all knew that David Megida had a point to prove. After a tough race in Europe, many people had written David off for this race, and he was keen to prove them all wrong. Coming into the wall balls, David just looked great. Dylan was close behind, but David's cadence was quite a bit faster, so there was no real chance in him losing at this point. As David stepped over the line, you really could see what this meant to him. You know, he took a moment to celebrate before collapsing on the floor, as most of us will do after a Hyrox. But actually, one of the things I found really interesting here is Dylan just sort of jogs over the line, which just isn't normal. And here you see Sandbach coming over the line, and he was closely followed by Ronkovic, who obviously beat him by a couple of spots a few weeks back in the European Championships. And I really love this shot of the guys just sort of lying around and sharing the experience with each other. They've just been through a heck of a race, and most of them are good friends, so it's really nice to see. David Megida taking that first place spot is a huge statement. I don't think anyone other than David Megida would have seen David being there. Dylan Scott placing in second place leading into Worlds is really exciting, and Michael Sandbach coming third shows he's really starting to string these solid high placings together now. Overall, this was a great race and sets us up perfectly for Worlds.